Ever felt invisible in a room full of people? You're surrounded by noise, yet you've never felt more alone. It's not just you, it's a psychological phenomenon. Today, we're breaking down the hidden science of why we feel lonely in a crowd and how to finally break that invisible wall. Have you ever stood in the middle of a busy party or sat at a dinner table surrounded by friends and suddenly felt a cold realization hit you? You look around at everyone laughing and talking, and even though you are physically there, it feels like you are watching a movie through a thick pane of glass. You are present, but you aren't connected. It is one of the most painful feelings in the world, because it makes you feel like there is something wrong with you. After all, if you aren't alone, why do you feel so lonely? The first thing you need to understand is that loneliness is not about the number of people in your contact list. It is a biological signal, much like hunger or thirst. When you are hungry, your stomach growls to tell you that you need food. When you feel lonely in a crowd, your brain is sending a distress signal telling you that your need for social nutrients isn't being met. You might be getting plenty of social snacks, small talk, jokes, and surface-level updates, but your soul is starving for a full meal of deep, authentic connection. Psychologists call this subjective isolation. It's the difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone is a physical state. You are by yourself. Loneliness, however, is an emotional state where your perceived social connections don't match your actual needs. You could be on a crowded subway or in a stadium with 50,000 people and still be the loneliest person on earth. This happens because our brains are wired for survival. Historically, being disconnected from the tribe meant danger. So, when you feel like no one truly knows you or understands what you are going through, your brain enters a state of high alert. This high alert makes you more sensitive to social cues. You might start overthinking every look someone gives you, or wondering if your friends actually want you there. It's a cruel cycle. The lonelier you feel, the more guarded you become. You start to wear a mask. You smile when you aren't happy, you say you're fine when you're struggling, and you play a character that you think people will like. But here is the secret. You cannot connect with people if you are hiding behind a mask. If people love the character you are playing, you will still feel lonely because you know they don't actually know the real you. As we dive deeper into why this wall exists between us and the world, it's important to realize that learning about your mind is the best way to heal it. If you are finding this helpful and want to understand yourself better, consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps us keep exploring these deep human experiences together, so you never have to feel like you're figuring this out on your own. The invisible wall often comes down to how we process social interactions. When we are around others, we often focus on performing rather than belonging. Performing is exhausting. It's about checking if your hair looks right, if your joke was funny, or if you're being cool enough. Belonging, on the other hand, is the opposite. It is the feeling that you can walk into a room and be exactly who you are, without any performance required. When you feel lonely in a crowd, it's usually because you are in a room where you feel you have to perform. Your brain realizes that if you stopped acting, these people might not be there for you. That realization creates a massive amount of internal stress. It's a heavy burden to carry, and it's why social events can sometimes leave you feeling more exhausted than a full day of work. You aren't just tired from talking, you're tired from the weight of that invisible wall. Once you realize that loneliness is a signal rather than a permanent flaw, the next step is looking at the environment around you. It is easy to blame ourselves for feeling disconnected, but often the problem isn't your personality, it is the specific social atmosphere you are breathing in. Not all social groups are created equal, and sometimes we feel lonely in a crowd simply because we are standing in the wrong crowd. Think about your social battery like a bank account. Some interactions are deposits that leave you feeling energized and seen, while others are constant withdrawals. Many people find themselves trapped in what we call the proximity trap. This happens when you become friends with people simply because they are their classmates, co-workers, or friends of friends. While there is nothing wrong with being friendly with the people around you, these relationships are often built on convenience rather than shared values or deep understanding. When you spend all your time with people who don't truly speak your language, you are forced to translate your personality into a version they can understand. That constant translation is what creates the feeling of being an outsider. Surface-level connections are like junk food for the soul. They feel okay in the moment you're laughing at the same memes or complaining about the same boss, but they don't provide the emotional sustenance you need to feel truly connected. If your social circle revolves entirely around what you do rather than who you are, you will inevitably feel lonely. This is why you can have 1,000 followers or a busy weekend schedule and still go to bed feeling empty. You are surrounded by people who know your face and your job title, but they don't know your fears, your dreams, or the things that make you stay up at night. We also have to talk about the impact of the digital age on our real-world interactions. We are the most connected generation in history, yet we are, arguably, the loneliest. This is because social media has taught us to observe people rather than interact with them. When you go to a social gathering today, there is often a third party in the room, the phone. Instead of experiencing a moment together, people are busy documenting the moment for others to see. This creates a strange meta-loneliness where you are physically with someone, but their attention is miles away, stuck behind a screen. When you are the one sitting there watching your friends scroll through their feeds, the invisible wall feels like it is made of cold, hard glass. Another major factor is the fear of being too much. Many of us have been conditioned to keep things light. We are told not to bring the vibe down or to keep our struggles to ourselves. This creates a culture of performance where everyone is pretending to be a slightly happier, more successful version of themselves. When everyone in a group is performing, no one is actually connecting. You end up feeling lonely because you assume everyone else is doing fine while you are the only one struggling. The irony is that almost everyone in that room is likely feeling the exact same pressure to stay on the surface. Identifying the root cause requires a bit of a social audit. Ask yourself, when I leave this group of people, do I feel more like myself or less like myself? If you find that you have to shrink your personality, hide your interests, or silence your opinions to fit in, you are paying a very high price for belonging. True belonging never requires you to change who you are. It only requires you to be who you are. If you are constantly auditioning for your spot in a social group, you aren't a member, you're a performer. Breaking this cycle starts with recognizing that your social battery is precious. You only have so much energy to give, and if you spend it all on shallow connections that leave you feeling drained, you won't have anything left for the people who might actually see you. It is better to have 2 people who truly understand your silence than 20 people who only like your noise. So, how do we actually break the cycle? If understanding the science is the foundation and auditing your circle is the floor, then this final stage is about building the doors that let people in. To stop feeling lonely in a crowd, you have to transition from being a passive observer of your life to an active participant in your connections. This isn't about becoming the loudest person in the room or suddenly turning into an extrovert if that isn't who you are. It's about changing the way you show up. The most effective tool for breaking that invisible wall is something most people are terrified of: vulnerability. We often think that to be liked, we have to be perfect, polished, and have all the answers. But perfection is actually a barrier to connection. People don't connect with your successes, they connect with your humanity. When you admit you're nervous, or you share a story about a mistake you made, you give the people around you psychological permission to do the same. This is how you move from a surface-level conversation about the weather to a deep-level conversation about life. Vulnerability acts like a magnet that pulls people through the fog of small talk and into the reality of who you are. Of course, you don't have to share your deepest secrets with a stranger at a coffee shop. Start with what is called incremental disclosure. Share a small, honest opinion or a minor personal detail and see how the other person reacts. If they meet you with kindness or share something back, you've just built a bridge. If they stay on the surface, that's okay too. You've simply learned that they might not be the person to provide the deep connection you need right now. The goal is to stop waiting for someone else to make the first move. Most people are just as lonely and just as afraid of rejection as you are. When you take the lead by being authentic, you become a lighthouse for others who are also feeling lost in the crowd. Another practical shift is moving from performing to curiosity. When we feel lonely in groups, we are usually stuck inside our own heads, worrying about how we look or what we should say next. This internal focus actually increases your feelings of isolation because you aren't really in the room, you're in your mind. To fix this, try to become the most curious person in the room. Instead of thinking, do they like me? Ask yourself, who are they really? When you ask meaningful questions and truly listen to the answers, you create a space where the other person feels seen. And here is the magic of human psychology. When you make someone else feel seen, you automatically feel more connected to them. Connection is a two-way street, and sometimes the best way to feel included is to be the one who includes others. We also have to talk about the importance of finding your tribe. If you've spent years trying to fit into groups that don't share your values, you might have forgotten what it feels like to be around people who actually get you. Now, it is easier than ever to find niche communities, yet many of us still rely on the proximity trap we discussed earlier. Seeking out groups based on shared interests, whether that's a book club, a coding community, a hiking group, or a volunteer organization, gives you a massive head start. In these environments, the crowd isn't a random collection of strangers, it's a group of people with a shared language. The loneliness fades because the context of your interaction is already built on something meaningful. Finally, you have to learn to be a good companion to yourself. It sounds counterintuitive, but the way you treat yourself when you are alone dictates how you feel when you are with others. If you are constantly judging yourself or feeling ashamed of your loneliness, you will carry that energy of lack into every room you enter. When you practice self-compassion and realize that your worth isn't defined by how many people are talking to you at a party, the pressure lifts. You stop looking at every social interaction as a test you have to pass and start seeing it as an experience you can choose to enjoy or leave. Connection is a skill, not a personality trait. It takes practice, and it takes the courage to be seen as you are, flaws and all. The next time you feel that invisible wall rising up while you're surrounded by people, take a breath. Remind yourself that you don't need to be the life of the party. You just need to be real. By choosing authenticity over performance and curiosity over fear, you can finally melt away the loneliness and find the belonging you've been looking for all along.